Hello friends, welcome back. In this video lecture we are going to discuss another important chromatographic technique which is known as gas chromatography. It is also abbreviated as GC. Now these are the contents what we are going to discuss in the coming slides. We have already studied the liquid chromatographic technique, which is also known as HPLC, that is high performance liquid chromatography. Now in HPLC we know the stationary phase is liquid and even the mobile phase is also liquid, so it is also called as liquid chromatography, and the principle of separation is based on the partition coefficient or the distribution coefficient. Now when we talk about the gas chromatography, in gas chromatography the stationary phase can be solid or it can be liquid, but the mobile phase is always gaseous in nature. So this is the only technique in which the gas acts as a mobile phase. So usually we take the inert gases, and these inert gases are acting as a mobile phase, which are pressurizing the or carrying our solute components what we are going to inject in a column which has the solid or liquid as a stationary phase. So based on what stationary phase it has, we can categorize or classify gas chromatography into two types of GC. So first type is GSC, that is called as gas solid chromatography. Now in gas solid chromatography, the stationary phase is solid and the mobile phase is gas. Because of this, the separation phenomena or the principle of separation of our components is based on the adsorption phenomena. In case of second type, that is GLC, that is gas liquid chromatography, in this case the stationary phase is liquid and the mobile phase is gas. So it is a liquid gas chromatography, and hence what happens, the separation phenomena is based on the partition coefficient. So usually most of the applications of GC are based on the GLC technique, and hence whenever we talk about GC, it is assumed that we are talking about the gas liquid chromatography. Now the principle of gas chromatography is very simple. So in this gas chromatography, what we are doing, we are taking the carrier gas or the inert gas as a mobile phase, and this carrier gas will take or elute our solute components. Now our solute components are usually converted into its vapor form, and this vapor form is injected in a column which has the solid stationary phase or it has a liquid stationary phase. So if you have solid stationary phase, the mechanism is based on the adsorption. Each solute will have its own adsorption time on the solid stationary phase with the pressure of carrier gas, and the solute components will be separated or they will be migrated inside a column. If it has a liquid stationary phase, again with the pressure of the carrier gas, the carrier gas will elute or will separate our solute components, which are again in a vaporized form, which are getting partition between the liquid stationary phase and the gaseous mobile phase. And that is how the separation happens, because each component will have its own partition coefficient. Now in gas chromatographic technique, unlike HPLC, now in HPLC the scope of HPLC is very wide, because the thumb rule of HPLC is if you can dissolve it, you can analyze it. So any compound which you can make it into a solution, you can inject it in HPLC column and you can detect it or you can quantify it. However, in case of gas chromatography, the only limitation is that our sample should be volatile in nature, or it should have sufficient volatility. So volatility is nothing but the sample can be converted into its vapor form. So that is the first criteria which is required to analyze the samples in gas chromatography, whether it is a GSC or whether it is a GLC. The second criteria is the sample, as you are evaporating the sample by application of heat, then it should have sufficient stability, so it should not be thermolabile. So sample should be thermally stable so that you can heat them and you can convert them into a vapor form. Now some samples will not be converted into a vapor form, or they are thermolabile. So what we usually do, we convert them into its derivatives. So if you do some chemical reaction like silylation or acylation, what we can do, we can convert them non-volatile into a volatile nature, and we can analyze those substances. So these are the things what we need to consider, and these are considered as in fact the limitation of gas chromatographic technique. Now if we want to differentiate between gas solid chromatography and gas liquid chromatography, now in GSC the stationary phase is solid and the other case it is liquid in case of GLC. Here the mechanism of separation is based on adsorption because it has a solid stationary phase, whereas in this case it is a partition coefficient. GSC is only widely used for the compounds of low molecular weight. So this is again a limitation of GSC, and which actually narrow down the scope of GSC, whereas GLC can be widely used for number of compounds, only you are able to evaporate them. In case of GSC, we usually prefer a packed column. So this is like the our regular conventional column, similar to that. So we take a stationary phase, usually the zeolite mixtures and so on, and these are entirely packed in a particular column. In case of GLC, our stationary phase is in the liquid form. Now this liquid can either be coated directly on the inner wall of column. You can immobilize the liquid phase inside the inner wall of the column, or you can have some solid particles, and on these solid particles you can coat the liquid. So on the surface of some solid inert substance, you can give a thin coat of our liquid phase. So these are the two possibilities in case of GLC of using the stationary liquid phase. When we talk about the instrumentation of GC, it is relatively simple compared to HPLC. We require the mobile phase, which is usually in a gaseous form. Now as we have a gas, we require the flow regulator and flow meters. We require sample injector to inject our sample. As it is a chromatographic technique, we require a column because that is a place actually where the sample is getting separated. Then we require a temperature controller because we are evaporating our samples and our mixture might have different boiling point or they have different volatility. So we have to control the temperature. We can do some kind of what we have seen in case of HPLC, that is isocratic elution and gradient elution with this. Then we should have to have a very sensitive detector which can sense whatever is eluting in what amount from the column, and then we have the recorder and integrator, and we need to have the computer system which can give a chromatogram. So in case of gas chromatography, the flow rate of the carrier gas or the mobile phase is depends on mainly the type of column. So if we are using packed column, the flow rate of the carrier gas is usually kept in between 25 to 150 ml per minute, and if you are using the open tubular column or the capillary column, the flow rate should be kept minimum, that is ranging from 1 to 25 ml per minute. Now this is a schematic diagram showing the instrumentation of gas chromatography. So this is the carrier gas which is acting as a mobile phase, and this carrier gas is giving a pressurized inert carrier gas which is moving through this flow regulator. So we can regulate the flow of this carrier gas. Then we have the thermostat, and in this thermostat the column is kept because we need to maintain the temperature because it is based on the volatility. And then we have the sample injection port, which is just before the column, and at the end of the column we have the detector system. And then we have flow meter, which is measuring at what particular flow rate the carrier gas is moving through the column. And then we have the amplifier and the recorder. So this is a simple schematic diagram which indicates how the instrumentation of GC is actually. Beginning with the instrumentation one by one, starting with the mobile phase, which is usually considered as a carrier gas in gas chromatography because it is carrying our sample over the stationary phase, that is, which could be a solid or liquid. So carrier gas have certain requirements. Carrier gas should be inert. It should not chemically react with your sample or the stationary phase. It should be easily available. It should be cheap, or it should be less expensive, and it should have the less risk of explosion or hazard because handling the gases is quite difficult. So we should not use any explosive gases. It should be compatible with the detector what you are using. So again, that based on what type of sample you have, and based on that we select the detector, and based on the detector we select the carrier gas. So it should be compatible or complementary with each other. Then it should be free from moisture, because if moisture is present, that will create a problem. It might alter your solid components, or it might create in the evaporation, it might disturb your stationary phase, and so on. So it should be free from moisture. It should be available in the pure form and stable before it enters into a column. That is again very important. The purity of the carrier gas should be very high, otherwise those impurities will again create problem with the column packing, and it might get detected into a chromatogram. And it should give best column performance consistent with the required speed of analysis. So these are the requirements the carrier gas should have, or we expect from the carrier gas. What are the different carrier gas recommended in gas chromatography? So first is a helium, which is a general carrier gas, or it can also be used as a makeup gas to add on based on the kind of detector or sample you are using. The only problem with the helium is very expensive. Next is a nitrogen gas. So it is same as the helium. It is also used as a makeup gas. The advantage of nitrogen is it is highly inert, it is very easily available, it is cheap, but it is not good for the capillary column as it gives the long run. Next one is oxygen. So oxygen, as all of we know, it is a combustion gas, and because of that we can use in a FID detector. So if you are using the flame ionization detector in your instrument, then you can use a oxygen gas. So this is how you have to use it complementarily. So if you are using FID, then you have to take the combustible carrier gas, otherwise you have to add on the carrier gas during the detection, but this is not normally used because of the impurities and all. Then other one is a argon, which is used in a TCD, that is a thermal conductivity detector. So it is especially used in determination of helium type of gases. Other one is a hydrogen, which is acting as a carrier gas for capillary column, and it is also a combustion gas for the flame ionization detector. The advantage is it is very cheap, but the limitation is it is highly explosive. So if you are using a hydrogen gas, we should be very much careful. And the last one is a air. So it is a combustion gas for FID. It is again cheap and readily available. So all of these are the gases which are recommended for the gas chromatography. However, usually we prefer the nitrogen, helium and hydrogen as a carrier gas in gas chromatographic technique. Now after carrier gas, the next part of the instrumentation is the flow regulators and the flow controllers. Now in this particular diagram or the figure, I have shown you how exactly the carrier gas looks like in a cylinder. So this is a pressurized tank similar to our LPG gas, but they are higher in length, and here we have a knob, rotating knob, so we can release the pressure from here. And then we have the two-stage tank regulator. So what these two-stage tank regulator are, so here we can see the first meter will show how much amount of carrier gas is present inside this cylinder, because you need to see the amount of carrier gas which is remaining, and then you have to have a buffer cylinder in place, or you can order that. Okay, so this is indicating how much gas is remaining inside this particular tank. And the other meter will indicate at what pressure the carrier gas is flowing, or you are allowing through this knob to pass through this particular tubing. Okay, so this tubing is taking our carrier gas into the further part of the instrumentation, and these are the two-stage regulator, one for indicating the pressure inside the carrier gas tank, and the other one is for indicating at what pressure you are allowing to pass through this particular tubing. And at the end of the system you have a flow controller. Okay, so that is indicating again at what speed the carrier gas is moving through the instrument. So with this speed you can regulate the pressure of this particular carrier gas, and that is how we can maintain the flow rate of the carrier gas. Now, as we have seen in the requirement, the carrier gas should be highly pure, it should be free from moisture. Now we should have to have some traps like what we have used in HPLC. So in HPLC again we purify the solvents by filtering through the membrane filter, or we are directly taking the HPLC grade solvents. Now in this case, after this two-stage regulators, we can have some traps. So trap A is nothing but the moisture trap. So if your carrier gas has certain moisture, or during the storage if it has absorbed any moisture, so that can be trapped in this particular moisture trap, or it is a moisture bed which usually trap the atmospheric moisture. Next is a B trap, that is a hydrocarbon trap. So if you have any hydrocarbon impurities inside the carrier gas, that will be trapped here with this hydrocarbon trap. And finally we have the oxygen trap. So if your carrier gas is mixed with oxygen as an impurities, so those will be trapped here. And then we have a highly purified carrier gas which can enter into a instrumentation. So this is the figure indicating the scope of our GC and LC. So which one you should go for, whether you should go for gas chromatography or whether you should go for HPLC or LC, that again based on the nature of our sample. So we have put here a demarcation line, and those samples which are on this part, so they will be usually non-volatile and they will be hydrophilic. Okay, so if your sample is highly hydrophilic and it is non-volatile, these are the samples, that is usually amino acids, then sugars, alcohols and so on. So usually you can dissolve these substances very easily and you can analyze by the LC. If you have the samples on the other side which are relatively hydrophobic and volatile in nature, like TMS derivatives, then essential oils, nitriles, nitrosamines, so those substances which can be easily evaporated, you can better go for the gas chromatographic technique. Okay, so this is a rough idea how you can go for whether to go for GC or whether to go for LC. That is again based on the volatility and whether it is a hydrophilic or whether it is a hydrophobic. After the carrier gas, next part is a sample injection port. Now sample injection port is a system in which we are going to incorporate our sample into a column. Now unlike HPLC, in case of GC, sample injection port plays a very vital role in deciding the reproducibility and accuracy of our analytical method, because in GC our sample is volatile in nature, or we are converting them into a vaporized form, and you should not lose our sample during the sample injection system or during the introduction of our sample. So the sample injection port should have the capability or should have the provision to vaporize the sample. It should have the provision to transfer the sample from your device into a column with great accuracy and reproducibility. So we may use the auto sampler system for delivering the exact and reproducible volume of our sample. So here the sample usually should be injected either in the form of liquid or in the form of gas. So when we have a solid sample, we need to dissolve them using a particular organic solvent, and then we can introduce that liquid through a needle into a sample injection port, where the liquid will get volatilized. It will be converted into a vaporized form, and then it will be introduced in a column. If you have gaseous sample, then you can directly incorporate into the column using this sample injection port system. So keep in mind, the sample should be converted either into a liquid or into a gaseous form. There are various types of injection port system available based on what type of column you have in place. So we have injection port for packed column and injection port for capillary column. Usually for capillary column we have again various types, that is a split injection port system, splitless injection port system, and cool on column injection port system. Additionally, for preparing the sample, we have different sampling devices like headspace, which is very widely used for the volatile solvents, then purge and trap system, wall and pyrolyzer. These are the commonly used sample preparation system in case of sample injection system. So usually the sample can be manually injected using a Hamilton syringe, or you can inject using a auto sampler. So if you want a reproducibility, you better should go for the auto sampling, and if you are interested in only the qualitative analysis and not much reproducibility or great accuracy, you can go for the manual injection. So usually this is a Hamilton syringe, what we have shown in this particular diagram, which has a flat end needle rather than the pointed one, and this is usually comes in a capacity of 25 microliter. Now only 2 to 4 microliter of sample we need to inject in a column. That is usually sufficient, and we have to examine exactly how much we are incorporating. Okay, so there are various volumes of syringes are available, but usually it is a 25. You can have a 10 microliter syringe also, and these have the calibrations like 5, 10, 15, 20 and 25 microliter, and this is how we can incorporate our sample. So this is actually the sample injection system, or it is an injection port system which has a rubber septum, and through this rubber septum we are putting our needle and we are forcing with the plunger to push our liquid sample, which goes inside here, and then it will evaporate. Now when we are incorporating our sample, we need to follow the standard conditions. So usually injector temperature generally is 250 degrees Celsius. If you have volatile sample, then you can maintain between 150 to 200, and those samples which are having high boiling point, you can keep it in between 275 to 300 degrees Celsius, especially for steroids, triglycerides or surfactants. And you should ensure what is the maximum temperature of the septum which is installed in a sample injection port, because it has to withstand at these particular higher temperatures. So it is a usual thing, because we are using the same sample injection port to incorporate different kinds of samples, and there is a possibility of contamination of these injector parts. So sample injection port has different parts, that is a tubing, then rubber septum, liner and seal. if you are using split or splitless injectors. Now we should regularly clean these, or we have to replace at a particular interval of time, because they will get contaminated with our previous samples. And this is a chromatogram which indicates what happens if we are not cleaning regularly or not replacing these septums after a regular interval of time period. So this is a chromatogram of same sample with the contaminated septum and same sample after the replacement of the septum. Okay, so you can see here this is not well resolved, and this is even not touching to the baseline. So this is problematic chromatogram. It will not give any idea about your quantification or qualitative analysis. So this one is a well resolved spectrum. Now in case of sample injection system, as we mentioned, pyrolyzer and so on, so there is a one more system, that is a headspace analysis. So headspace analysis is actually a sample preparation system. So what is actual meaning of headspace? So headspace is a gas space above the sample in a chromatography vial. So here we have shown the chromatographic vial, and what we usually do, those samples which are highly volatile like essential oils or residual solvents, so these samples are very difficult to handle because they might get evaporated even at atmospheric temperature, and then there is a problem of reproducibility when we are injecting those samples into a column. So what usually we do, we take these samples and we put in a specially designed chromatographic vials, what I have shown here, and we fill these samples only at half portion of this bottle. So this is called as the sample part. So this sample could be mixed with some kind of diluent or some kind of matrix modifier, and it has a tight cap system. Okay, so what happens, as they are highly volatile, so during the storage, within a fraction of seconds, what will happen, they will evaporate and they will occupy, the sample will occupy the vaporized form in this upper part. So this upper part is nothing but the headspace of this vial. Okay, so what we can do, your sample is highly volatile, it has a difficulty in handling and incorporating into a injection port system. So we have a specially designed sample vials, and in these vials we put our sample only to the half portion, that is called as a sample portion, and the remaining portion is empty. Over the period of time, because of high volatility, the sample will get volatilized and it will occupy the head space, the upper space of this particular vial. And because of the rubber septum and tight screwing or tight capping, the sample will not get volatilized from this particular vial. Okay, so what we do, we can inject the syringe and then we can take out our sample which is now in the gaseous form, and then immediately you can inject it into an injection port. So this is a headspace analysis which is mostly suited for very volatile analytes or highly volatile samples, either in a solid or liquid samples. This is very widely used in analysis of residual solvents in the pharmaceuticals, then flavors in beverages, fragrance in cosmetics, alcohol in urine or blood. The advantage of using this headspace analysis is it requires very minimal sample preparation. In fact, you need not to do anything, just take your sample and put in this headspace vial at half portion, and then your job is done. Just you put it in a auto sampler tray and then just program it, whatever volume you want to take out it will do, and it will be very reproducible kind of sample injection, and can be used for difficult samples like matrices like bloods, powders, paste, etc., usually the cosmetics and so on, and it can be easily automated. So these are the different headspace vials and septas. So based on the sample volume, you can have various kind of dimensions of headspace vials, and you can see here the sample is put only the half portion usually, and the remaining is a headspace where it is occupying our volatile sample. Next is a oven temperature setup. So in case of LC, if you remember, we have a provision of doing isocratic or gradient elution. However, in case of GC, as we are using only a inert gas, so there is no such provision to have a isocratic or gradient elution. However, as our sample is getting volatilized, we can have the isothermal and temperature gradient or thermal program kind of elution. Now what is this isothermal? In isothermal, what we do, we maintain the temperature of the column throughout the experiment same. So the concept is same here as that of the isocratic and gradient. In isocratic elution of LC, what we do, we maintain the composition of the solvent system throughout the experiment same. In gradient elution, we keep on gradually changing the composition or gradually either increasing or decreasing the polarity of the mobile phase. So here you cannot play with the mobile phase. So what we are doing, we are playing with the temperature conditions in which our column is thermostat. So what we can do, as we have the number of components in a particular sample which has a different volatility, so there are two possibilities. In one possibility, we can start at one particular temperature and at same temperature we will end up the experiment. So throughout the experiment, unless and until all the components are getting eluted, we are maintaining the same temperature for a column. So throughout experiment it is a similar temperature, so that's why it is called as iso means similar. So that is called as isothermal elution. So isothermal elution is we are maintaining the temperature constant. So for example, we can see here, so we have a column and the carrier gas is a helium which is flowing at 30 cm per second, and then the oven temperature is kept 100 degrees Celsius in case of this A chromatogram or A elution. Okay, so you can see here there are 7 components which is to be eluted in a particular sample, and it took almost 50 minutes. On x-axis we have retention time, so it took almost 50 minutes to elute all these 7 components. Okay, and there is a, you can see here from 6 to 7 there was a huge difference because they have different volatility. Okay, so the one which is eluting very fast, that is having very low boiling point, and the one which is eluting slower, that has a very high boiling point. Okay, so these are the 7 components what we have listed here, N-decane, N-undecane and so on. So in this particular experiment we have maintained the temperature 100 degrees Celsius unless and until all these components are getting eluted. So this is called as isothermal. Now in second condition, what we can do, we can gradually keep on increasing the temperature at a particular interval of time. For example, in this case, you can see here we have started the experiment at 50 degrees Celsius for 1 minute, and after 1 minute the temperature has been changed. How it has been changed? 50 to 120 degrees Celsius at 20 degree per minute. So we started with 50 degrees Celsius. After 1 minute, for each next minute we are increasing 20 degree unless and until it reaches to 120 degrees Celsius. And because of that, what is happening, we can see in case of isothermal it took almost 50 minutes to elute all these 7 components. However, in the temperature program we could able to elute all these 7 components even less than 8 minutes. So you have minimized your elution time to a great extent from 50 minutes to 8 minutes, and this is the beauty of the temperature program or the temperature gradient elution. So all these components are getting eluted in a faster time, and you can see the elution is also better. So here it was not giving an intense peak here also, but in this case the speed of analysis is also there and the resolution is also in a better way. Okay, so usually when you have the compounds with complex nature, with have different kind of volatility, then it is always advisable to go for the temperature gradient gas chromatographic system rather than the isothermal. So these are the two ways of using isothermal and gradient elution. Then optimum oven temperature of these solvents are given. So this table indicates those data. So for example, if you are using N-pentane or diethyl ether, which has a boiling point of 36 degrees Celsius. So if you are using these solvents in your experiment, then the suggested initial oven temperature is in between 10 to 25 degrees Celsius. Okay, so these are certain guidelines which you need to keep in mind when you are doing the gas chromatographic experiment. So these are the things what we have seen in part 1. So we will shortly come with the part 2 and discuss the other part of the instrumentation of GC. Thank you.